Compound sentences. We're going to go through and learn about compound sentences and how to form compound sentences. A sentence, the definition of it is a sentence that contains at least two independent clauses. Now we have to remember, I'll review that for you. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb and makes sense. Okay? It cannot be a partial one. It has to be a complete sentence that makes sense. Okay? Well, compound sentences can be formed in three ways. Got to remember that compound is independent clauses, okay? And you can use a coordinate conjunction to join these two independent clauses that form a compound sentence, and those are more or less like words which are very common, and, but, for, nor, or, so, yet, etc. Or you can use a semicolon. Okay? So anyhow, we won't talk about that right now. And you can also use a colon to form compound sentences. We're going to stay strictly to the independent clauses. Okay? What's a simple sentence? Okay. Well, let's take a look at that. More or less, a simple sentence are very simple. They are essentially just a sentence. Okay, they are independent clauses and are often called main clauses. Okay, so they are main because we have a sentence that is complete and makes sense, and we want to put those two together. Let's take a look at some simple samples. Children are all foreigners. Okay? Subject, verb, and additional information that makes that sentence complete. It makes sense. Children are all foreigners. We can understand that. Mother died today. Simple sentences. Of course, no man is entirely in his right mind at any time. Very interesting. Okay. Early to rise and early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Okay, I think you understand simple sentences. I'm sure you have dealt with them yourself, made simple sentences, but we're going to something a little more complex. So let's take a look at some examples of compound sentences. This is a compound sentence. They may take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. As you can see there's two complete sentences that make sense. They may take our lives, can stand alone by itself. They will never take our freedom, will stand alone by itself. In other words, it makes sense. Now, another important thing about compound sentences, more or less the two sentences have to balance. They have to be more or less referring to the same things. You know, you can't say they may take our lives, but the dogs are very happy. That doesn't fit. It doesn't refer back to the other one. Okay, because we're talking about lives and we're talking about freedom, which is very similar, and we can tie those two together. Continue. The drought had lasted now for 10 million years, and the reign of the terrible lizards had long since ended. You can see these are two sentences that are joined. by the conjunction and. Always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't go to yours. Well, you can see that here we have to use otherwise, and there we have the semicolon and the comma used, because this is sort of like considered a side remark, you know what I mean? Otherwise, so to indicate that we have a semicolon, the connecting word, and the rest of the sentence. Then we say feasts must be solemn and rare, or else they cease to be feasts. You can see that these are two independent sentences that are joined by or, and we have a comma, which is very common use in this sense of the compound sentence. Here we have another example. Arguments are to be avoided, colon. Okay, here we have a colon. They are always vulgar and often convincing. Okay, so essentially those are examples using different forms of conjunctions. And we have a little message sent there by compound sentences. It is the structure. A compound sentence sends a certain message to readers, no matter how you fill in the blanks. First, it tells readers that the sentences contain two relatively important ideas, and each one deserves its own independent clause. Second, it tells readers that these two ideas are approximately equal in importance, since they are balanced as a pair. Now, I talked about the balance. It has to be referring to the same thing, so it's not way off somewhere where the two are put together and it doesn't make any sense. It has to be balanced. And third, it alerts readers to the relationship between the two ideas, depending on the connector. For example, and suggests that two ideas are being added together, but indicates they are being contrasted. R tells us that they are alternatives, and a semicolon suggests a balance between the two similar or sharply contrasting statements. Here are more examples, and this is a very complex compound sentence. Complex meaning that it's not simple. It was dawn outside, a glowing gray, and birds had plenty to say out in the bare trees. Here you see a semicolon. And at the big window was a face and a windmill of arms. As you can see, this is a little more complicated compound sentence, but it is a compound sentence, and it makes these. Here we have an and, birds are plenty to say out in the bare trees. It was dawn outside. They're complete sentences. And then we have a semicolon and an and. At the big window was a face, a windmill of arms. It's also a complete sentence connected by and, but if we take, we can see that the semicolon is here as part of the punctuation. This one, the glacier knocks in the cupboard, the desert sighs in the bed, and the crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. Okay, very good. These are great examples. You can see that we have complete sentences, we have a conjunction, and that is how you make a compound sentence.